Here's the clickbait headline of the day, but only if you're a nerd. If one painter can paint a room in 4 hours, can 32 painters paint a room in 8 minutes? And if that doesn't have you, we're giving away this Fractal Defined Nano S case. It is a Bill Owen mod. This is number 23. It is unique and one of a kind. If either of those things interest you, stay tuned. And even if not, stay tuned anyway, because we gotta pay the bills, we gotta eat, watch, subscribe. So it sounds like a mess having 32 painters in a room trying to paint it in 8 minutes. I mean, there would just be paint everywhere, and it gets to a point where, you know, it's kind of absurd. 64 painters in 4 minutes, or 128 painters. Would 128 painters even fit in this room? Well, going multi-core is kind of like that. Intel would have us believe that moving from $1,000 to $1,700 for only 2 more cores is the value proposition that makes sense. Now, there might be other things that you get along the way other than cores, like cache memory or other performance characteristics. So it's not necessarily the cores that we're after, but is the value proposition there? I'll give you a hint, I don't think it is. But in order for us to figure it out, we've got to do a shootout with the very top end Broadwell E that we can get, which in this case is a Xeon, which is a 12-core part, even beyond the $1,700 10-core part. We've got to also compare it with Broadwell E, a 6800K. At the lower end, we're also going to compare it with Skylake, and we're also going to compare it with the server build that I did, where I recycled a server into a desktop, a gaming desktop. And the video for that is already out, and the information is in the description. So this video is about us doing a build in a lovely Fractal Defined Nano S case with the ASRock X99 ITX with our 12-core Broadwell E Xeon part. This is the system that we're going to use for the testing. This is the system that we're going to use for the 4-way shootout to figure out just what are the diminishing returns of adding more cores. Is it really about clock speed? Or what's the balance between clock speed, cache memory, and number of cores? What's the value proposition? What's the best bang for the buck? Now, we're not going into this thing totally blind. We know of other benchmarks out there, like people are building i3s, a dual core i3, with things like the 1080 graphics card. And so these systems, these builds seem really unbalanced. It's like, well, for gaming in certain types of tasks, more cores just doesn't matter. And so part of my goal with this, part of my secondary goals with this, is to try to find the kinds of workloads that real people might be doing where they would actually benefit from going from 8 cores to 10 cores, or going from 6 cores to 10 cores, or in my case, 6 cores to 12 cores with a Xeon part. One of those projects is going to be around the Lucida AI. The Lucida AI is something that I've been very excited about, but I haven't really had a chance to work on. If you want to follow more about that, you can subscribe to the Tech Linux channel and learn more about Lucida AI and things like that. But that project is at least a couple of weeks away, if not more. So bear that in mind. But for this build, in terms of what we do with it, it's really just down to the parts. We got to start with the parts, and then after that, it's just whatever software we've got loaded on it. So for now, we're going to put a bunch of parts in it, and we're going to do a bunch of benchmarking. And once we get the benchmarking out of the way, once we do our 4-way shootout, then I'll be able to use this system for other things, and I'll be able to give away the case to one lucky winner. So without further ado, let's do the build. Now, the Fractal Defined Nano S case is an ITX case. If you haven't seen it before, we haven't really officially reviewed it, but this is a dead sexy ITX case, and there's tons of room in here. If you want to do a custom loop cooler or something like that, you totally can. For now, we're going to put the ASRock X99E ITX AC motherboard in it. This motherboard actually comes with a custom bracket for a closed loop water cooler if you want to be able to use that, because it has server style X99 mounting. It also comes with its own X99 cooling solution that's designed for the more narrow fit. And so we're going to just use the default heatsink for now, though I might swap this out with water cooling or something else like that later. For storage, we're going to be using the Toshiba NVMe OCZ RD400. Why this? Well, it's nice and fast that I can just pop it in the M.2 slot on this motherboard and basically be good to go. For graphics, we're going to use the Radeon RX 480, which is a great solution on Linux and is powerful enough that I can use it for some side compute projects and maybe some stuff in the AI side of things, where I can actually use OpenCL and other compute resources on the graphics card to help me out a little bit with this build. For our memory, we're going to be using the G.Skill Trident Z memory. This memory is very high performance DDR4 3200, and so even though I'm not in a quad channel situation, I'm hoping I can make up for that a little bit by clocking the memory at 3200 megahertz. Now for the power supply in this, I'm going to be using the Fractal Integra 650 watt power supply. This is a great power supply. It's nice and quiet. It's perfect for this build. I might have opted for a 750 watt power supply if I was going to put a higher end graphics card in here, or if I was going to have other peripherals, or a custom loop water cooler or other peripherals that might be seriously demanding on power. But for our 12-core Xeon and the performance characteristics and the fact this is an ITX board, 650 watts is about right for this build, and I'm actually going to give away the power supply along with the case when we do the giveaway. So now that we've got the build put together, it's time to go do the benchmarks. Be sure to keep an eye out for the 4-way shootout video that's going to involve this computer, one other Broadwell computer, a Skylake computer, and my garbage computer. And if you haven't seen the garbage computer video, there's a link in the description. Be sure to check that out. It's 16 cores, 32 threads, based around the Xeon E5 2670. And if you have any questions or comments, be sure to let us know on the forums at techsyndicate.com. I'm Wendell, I'm signing out, and I'll see you later.